Hello and welcome to topic 1B, the second part, where we are going to do another example. And number 15 is the example that I want to look at. But this time, instead of doing everything by hand, we're going to see how a spreadsheet can just make things a little bit more efficient, speed things up in terms of the calculations. So before we get to this specific question, let us first just run over some basics of a spreadsheet application, spreadsheet software. I'm going to use Microsoft Excel, but I don't want to do it in a way that forces you to use this specific spreadsheet software. It should work in other things like OpenOffice and Google Sheets and things like that. Well, in a very similar way, but I will use Excel because I'm familiar with it. Now, it might seem a little overwhelming if you've never used a spreadsheet before, but give it time. And my goal with this is to just be more efficient in our hand calculations, not to necessarily have things done for us like a dedicated statistics uh, software application would do. So the goal for me here is to see how a spreadsheet can speed up my hand calculations. I know in Excel there are uh, packages that can do many things for you, especially when it comes to statistics. We might show some of them afterwards, but it's not the goal here. The goal is not to replace me, but just to make me more efficient. So if you watch this and think, oh, but I could do that much faster. Yes, I understand that, and I know, but that's not my goal here. People don't really understand this middle ground of where spreadsheets can be used. They think it has to be all by hand, or when I use a spreadsheet, it's going to be super fancy and sophisticated, but there's something in between where I can use the spreadsheet as a calculator. So let's see. So first of all, I have these different cells where I can type stuff in. I can type text. I can type some numbers, 125, and have descriptions for my information to keep track of it. So I can actually have a lot of information showing here as I need to, and with text, remember what it represents. If I want to delete it, I just press delete, or I can also go to the home here and press on this eraser to clear it. Lots of different options. Now, because this is our first video using spreadsheets, I am going to make this a little bit longer to introduce it for those that have never used this before. Feel free to skip until we show this sheet 1, where we'll specifically start working. But for now, let's just run through some basics. I can make sequences of numbers very easily. If I say 1 here and I press enter to go down, 2 and 3, at least 3 of them, I would say, for safety. If I highlight all 3 of them, I can hover over this bottom right corner until my cursor changes, drag it down, and Excel notices the pattern and continues that pattern. You see the preview, hopefully it's small, continues that pattern that it observed. These things are very handy to make sequences of numbers. It doesn't have to be consecutive. I could say 2, 5, 8, jumps by 3 every time, and it'll recognize that. And you can see, okay, no, it's doing what I want it to do. Good. So things like that are very handy. Well, well, I said we want to use this as a calculator, so let's get right to that. To do that, we have two options. Let's say we want to calculate 2 plus 3, right? Just like we did in MathBot in our calculator. I start with an equal sign, just a single one. I say 2 plus 3, and that equal sign lets Excel know that, oh, I'm trying to look for the answer of this calculation. And it tells me 5. If I just say 2 plus 3, it's just going to see that as text that I want to write down. And it's not going to know to calculate that. But with an equal sign in front, I have that. You see here at the top, it's a little small perhaps, but I have my formula bar, which when I when I select that cell, it shows me where that 5 came from. It was a calculation. So I can also type in the formula bar by clicking in the formula bar. I think I still have to start with an equal sign and say maybe 6 times 9, and it'll calculate that for me. That is a way I can just use this as a calculator. I want an answer over here, and I can say this is my answer, and then I write it over there, and I have a bigger layout than a calculator screen. It's just like a huge calculator screen, really, at the very basic level. And if I just want to use it like that, absolutely wonderful. Still a better, more efficient calculator. So it has another nice option. Let's suppose I just want to get rid of this. Let's just delete that. And let's suppose I have these numbers 1 to 15 perhaps. And I want to I want to add 2 to each one. Now, yes, I could say, well, this one is 1, so I can 1 plus 2. Great. Oopsie. I thought it was MathBot. It told me, oh, no, error, no, just one equal sign. It lets you know when you make a mistake. I was thinking MathBot. And then I can say, oh, this is a 2, so 2 plus 2. And I can keep going like that. But what I can also tell Excel is do a calculation. That's what the equal sign says. Take the value of this cell and then add 2. And it'll do that. I can do the same thing. Start with the calculation, take the value of this cell, and add 2. Now, because I'm going to do the same thing for all of these, I can just select one that has the correct formula. I can double click it to see that formula, and it sees with color coding, it shows you the reference of the cell. Or what I prefer to do when it gets a little bigger, the calculations, click in the formula bar and it shows you that as well. I can go to the bottom right here and drag this down, and that then copies the formula all the way. And you see if I select this one, it took the cell to its left and added 2. This one, it was all relative to the cell. It took the cell to its left and added 2. And I didn't have to type it in every time. It just copies that formula, that calculation. Take the cell to your left and add 2. And it did that every time. And I can verify it because I used easy numbers, that it did what I wanted it to do. Instead, though, let's suppose I want to take this first cell with a 1 in it and always just add 2 to that one. I don't want the blue cell to down relative to where the answer is going to go. I can go click inside the reference, the name for that cell, which is D6, and press F4. And you see it put $signs at certain places. That will tell Excel that this blue cell is not going to move as I copy the calculation, copy the formula. That should always be this cell. So then when I drag this down, copying the formula, it's always the same. This one still uses that. I fixed that cell in the calculation. It's always the same. Without it, without the dollar signs, I could manually put dollar signs in there, but F4 does that automatically. Without it, it's going to move with me. It's a relative position. With it, it's sort of an absolute fixed position. So these things are handy as we progress and we want to use existing numbers in future calculations. Our calculations are often going to go, I use this number in a next calculation or the combination of those in a future calculation, and so it flows into each other. It's very nice to have some space that I can write down what I'm doing, and the calculator stuff is really the same. It's just a more presentable and therefore easier to use calculator. Okay, so I also have some other built-in functions that are fairly intuitive. And let's suppose I want to put a function over here that calculates, let's suppose I want to calculate the average of these two numbers. I'm going to write here average, and I'm going to put my answer over there. Yes, I can say equal brackets this value plus this value and by 2. That. But as things get a little bit more complicated, and maybe there are many numbers, and I don't want to type in one by one, right? I can use a built-in function by clicking on this insert function right next to the formula bar, and it's going to give me a whole bunch of options. I can search for something. Well, I'm looking for average. Is there something that the naming is pretty intuitive? Is there something like that? Yeah, there's a lot, but the first average has a description, returns the average, arithmetic mean, which is what I'm looking for, of its arguments, which can be numbers and stuff. Things are always more complicated. This is just an introduction. So I can say, okay, I like that one. Go okay. And then Excel actually guides me through what to put in different numbers. So in this case, let's just do it like this. My first number, I want it to be that one. My second number, I want it to be that one. Yes, I can do it in a different way as well, but for now it's sufficient. And I say okay, and it gives me the same answer. So I have a bunch, and this is called the average function, named. So often when I have bigger collections of numbers that I want to do stuff with, having these built-in functions can be quite efficient and just makes everything simpler for me. I do understand the underlying calculation, but it's tedious to do one by one. When I have to add up a whole bunch of them maybe, and then divide by how many there are, the average function does that, for example, for me. Now there are fancier functions, and there is a lot, but I think this gives us the idea. And if you come across something you want to do, it's easy, just Google it. I do that too sometimes. You don't have to know everything within Excel. Google it. Find how do I do this in Excel or whatever spreadsheet software you have. All right, let us go to our question that we want to. So we're doing another example, and this is an example you can do by hand. I just want to give you an alternative option for a calculator. That's the only difference. Simpler, easier to use, convenient, quality of life calculator. I want to do number 15, which comes from the Statistics for Psychology book. Following are the speeds of 40 cars clocked by a radar on a particular road in a 35 mile per hour zone on a particular afternoon. So you see here, compared to the one that we did previously, we have a lot more in our collection of scores, making it a little bit more tedious to go and count and see frequencies. In this case, they want a grouped frequency table because there's a lot, if I sort of have it a very fine distribution, counting each number occurring, it might not give me a lot of information in how the distribution looks, especially if I have a lot of options for possible values. It makes, excuse me, sense to group them a little bit together first. So we're going to go in like groups of 5 just to have some middle ground. 10 might uh, merge too much information and I can't see enough. And 2 fine might not have a variety of frequencies and I can't see anything. Take some trial and error. We'll just do a 5 in this case. And then I want to make a histogram, and we'll show how we can actually make that histogram in Excel. And then, like always, we want to describe the shape. Do we see anything? Maybe we see nothing. Maybe it looks a little skewed, but it's so close I can't really tell. That's all okay. It's just a description to remind us about skewness and kurtosis and things like that. Okay, so don't worry much about that at this stage. So I already put all these numbers into Excel. You just look on your page, you type them in, boom, 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 boom. That, so they're all there. Now let's suppose, like we did by hand, not writing it, we're typing it in. We're still doing it, right? Nothing is done for us. So nothing is changing. It's just convenience. So they say there are 40 cars. I want to be sure that I didn't miss one. When I write it down or type it in, I could easily miss one. How do I count how many there are? In the simplest way, I can very easily count. Just write this over here. I want to count. I'm going to make a counter. Not there, over there. I'm going to say this is my first one. This is my second one. This is my third one, because I know Excel can extend this pattern very quickly and have a counter all the way to match the end of my list. And I see, oh, the last one has number 40. There are 40 of them. It's just a coincidence that it happens to be the same number. So what I often like to do, yes, I know. If you know about spreadsheets already, there are actual functions that I can do. But very often, I can very quickly just say 1, 2, 3, put a counter next to each of my values, which my scores rather, extend that, and whatever the last one is, that's how many there are. So my question says there are 40. That's what I got. So chances are I didn't mess one up, or I didn't miss one at least. But of course, it's not a guarantee. I'll show this here, maybe over here. I want to count how many there are in a more sophisticated way. There's a function for that. I rarely use it, to be honest. I just do the little counter. It's so fast. But it's probably has a name related to counting, right? So let's go count. Count. Counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. Well, that's exactly what we want. So I'll go OK. My values, I just want to put the whole range in. Go down and select the whole thing. And it counts 40 of them. Alternatives to the same thing. Doesn't always have to be a fancy function. The little 1, 2, 3 counter, I use that all the time. It's simple, it's fast, it doesn't have to be fancy. Now, the next thing for my frequency table is I want to know the range of scores I have here. That'll give me the range of values of the variable that I'm working with. I want to show you here, let's suppose I want to write down and remind myself what is the variable in question here. But I don't have a lot of space. I want more space up here. I can right click on one of the cell rows and say insert, and then I'll just want to remind myself, let's say X represent the, what was it? I don't even remember. The following speeds, okay. The speed of a car in a certain situation and so on, and we got these scores. So I want to know what is the minimum, what is the maximum score. Let's get rid of that. We've already checked it. We're good. The minimum and maximum will tell me the range, right? So maximum, yeah, I could look and see, ooh, I think it's 42. There's a, it's inefficient, right? Excel tries to help me, and there is a max function. Hey, let's search for max. Go. Max. There are other things. Don't care about them. Returns the largest value in a set of values. Yeah, that's what I want. First number, I can actually select the whole set, and it says the largest one is 52. Right? That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure because there are a lot of them. When I only have a few, like the previous example, okay, great. That's easy to do. Larger the collection becomes, I might need some help. I also want to do the minimum. So let's search for min. Min. Returns the smallest number in a set of values. Perfect. That's what I want. Oops, I have to actually select them. Go down all the way here. Select them. Beautiful. The smallest one is 15. Now let's make my frequency table over here. Say I'm going to give it a heading, frequency table. I'm going to have a column for X. I'm going to have a frequency, if I can learn how to spell, and I'm going to have a relative frequency percentage. That's going to be my heading. I made them bold, but just going to home, selecting bold, just like I would in any other basic text software. I can underline them if I want to, doesn't matter, right? The appearance can always be changed. I can give borders to my, all kinds of stuff. Now, this isn't actually X, right? Because they, in my frequency table, because they asked me to do a grouped frequency table. There. So I should say here rather, let's say of X. You see here that this column wasn't wide enough to show all my text. I can select the column, I can go to the right side, and you see the cursor change and double click and it fits it automatically, or drag it around to be as tight as possible. Or I could also say maybe range. Whatever. Groups are fine. Groups are fine. Okay. So the smallest one is 15, so let's go 15 to not doing a minus calculation, right? I didn't lead that with an equal sign, I'm just writing text. 15 to 19, say that. Because they didn't specify the group, so let's just decide. So I just want to type these in as a reminder, 20 to 24. I want the group sizes to always be the same, right? 25 to 29, 30 to 34, until we cover the maximum, 52. 35 to 39, oops, no, done. 40 to 44, 45, oopsie. 5 to 49 to 54, and I don't need anything further because there isn't anything higher than 52. Right. Now, if I want to do it by hand in a spreadsheet, it's still more efficient, but it's not, I warn you, going to be the simplest thing right now. But however, it's still going to be better than trying to count here. How many of these fall between 15 and 19? See one, but if this was a longer list, these numbers start blurring together, and I don't know for sure. So I can definitely do it by hand, right? But I can also easily see that if this list gets longer and longer, I could easily get these frequencies wrong. How can I do it more efficiently using built-in functions. I know, I'll say again, disclaimer, if you know more about Excel, yes, there are fancier ways. There are built-in stats packages. But then we're crossing over to statistics software, and we're going to do that next. That's not my goal is to use a fancy calculator, but I will mention that at the end. What do I want to do here? I know this is a little fancy. If you've never worked with a spreadsheet before, this part is going to be a little overwhelming. Just give it time. Give it time. First video on this specific topic, right? What do I want to do? I want to count how many of my scores fall into this range. Or for this first group, there's nothing lower than 15. It could have been 0 here. It doesn't actually matter. Oopsie. Get away. Doesn't actually matter. But I'll keep it like that. The 15 is irrelevant. It's just the first bracket that'll catch the smallest number. So really what I want to do is count how many scores fall 19 and below. Maybe there's a function that counts stuff. Now it's not going to be the count function because we've already covered that just counts how many things there are, no conditions. But there's a countif. Counts the number of cells within a range that meet the given condition. And I have a condition. I want them to be less than or equal to 19. Countif. Now what is my range of scores, my range of cells, my range of values, whatever? All my scores. Look in all of this. And the criteria is be less than or equal to 19. Like we expected, because we could sort of look through this list. It wasn't that long. That guy was the only one. There's only one. Okay. Just like for this one, at the end, the 54 doesn't actually matter because there's nothing past 52. So I could say, go here and count. I've used it recently, countif. In my range, count how many are greater than or equal to 50. Okay, so I can count how many things satisfy a certain condition. But now for the in-between ones, if I want to do it by hand, it might not be so straightforward. If I now say, for 20 to 24, the exact same way. To be more efficient, actually no, I'm not going to be more efficient right now. I'm just going to do it manually. Because this might be a little difficult, I want to do them systematically. I'm going to go to my countif function, and I want to say in my range, time here to get everyone used to what is happening here. Words, all the function names are fairly intuitive. Count how many are less than or equal to 24. There are 4 of them. However, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for 20 to 24. So I should take away those that are, here is my function detail. The cell doesn't show all of it necessarily. Yeah, I can just double click on this and then it'll show it. I want to take away those that are less than or equal or are less than 20. The ones below 20 shouldn't be included in the 20 to 24 bracket. I take everything below 24, but I don't want to consider things below 20. So I need to count if my range again has the condition, and it's done in quotation marks, to be less than 20. So close the bracket. And you see it's one less than the 4 that I had previously. This is one way. I totally agree it's not the only way. But making things more compact doesn't always help understanding for those that are seeing this for the first time. There is a method to my madness. Do not worry. If you know more, well, then you don't need this, right? So this is a way to do it. Because I'm looking for brackets, the countif with a simple condition here of a less than or equal to 24 is going to go all the way from the bottom to 24. But some of those are already covered in the previous bracket. Okay. So now what I also want to do in this is make this range, the set of scores fixed. Because I'm always going to reference the same thing. They're not going to move. It's always where the list is that it has to look up. So nothing changes in the answer. But then what it allows me to do is not for the next bracket type this whole thing again. I can use this because the formula, the calculation is going to look very similar. Very similar. The blue range of scores will be the same as well. Just the conditions are going to change a little bit. So I can drag this formula over and copy it. Yes, the number doesn't make sense right now, but everything, sort of the outline, the skeleton of the calculation is correct. I'm going to count, looking at the scores, which ones are less than or equal to 29, and remove anything less than 25. The skeleton was there. I just needed to update the specifics for this range, this little bracket, 25 to 29. See that there are 2. And then I can just keep going like that. Not that many to do, so I'll just do it. Bear with me. I want to count everything up to 34, take away anything less than 30. 15 of them. I didn't have to count 15. I would probably make a mistake because the set is big. Next one, look at everything up to 39, but take away everything less than 35 because it's covered in previous brackets. I get 11. See where the efficiency is coming in? Yes, there's a little bit of knowledge. Fair enough. Everything comes at a price, but it's not that bad. Once you get used to it, you gain so much more in efficiency. It is totally worth it to use Excel as a sophisticated calculator, in my opinion. But you never have to. For this whole course, you can completely ignore all the Excel stuff. If you don't like it, you can just walk away. But enable yourself. Learn something new. It's good for you. So now here I want to, caps lock on. Here I want to calculate the sum of these columns. I want to add them all together and make sure I get 40. I didn't do anything wrong. Even though it's a little bit more automated, I could still make a mistake, right? So let's calculate that. Well, there's probably a built-in function. Let's try sum. Yeah, adds all the numbers in the range. All right. Now I want that range. Okay, 40. Good. Lines under these. Is it different? And make that bold maybe. This isn't part of my frequency table. It's just my check. Relative frequency. What is the calculation? Well, we did it by hand already. It's going to be 1 out of 40 made a percentage. Now, I don't enjoy setting the format of a cell. You can see here, I can format cells to tell it, should it be a currency? Should it be just anything? Should it be specifically a number, a date, a time? There's a percentage option there as well. I don't like it. Don't like it. I'll do my own thing. Just like I won't use the percentage button on a calculator. Things get a little confusing. It doesn't show you exactly everything. It does the times 100 for me. I'll prefer to see that in my calculation. Now, I'm not going to say 1. I'm going to say take this cell. I'm not going to say divide by 40. I'm going to say divide by that guy. And then I'm going to multiply by 100 so that I can see I made it a percentage. It's not going to have the percentage sign next to it. That's okay. If I now drag this down, oh no, what happened? Well, it's looking to divide by something that's empty. I should have gone up here and said, no, this red one, the total should be fixed. So that when I drag it down, so the blue one moves with me, as it should. It's the frequency for that row, but the pink one doesn't. The pink one stays fixed. So I can just drag it down instead of by hand. With a hand calculator, I'll say, we had to do each one. Efficiency. Not doing it for me, just doing it more efficiently. I want to calculate the sum here as well. This one, I already have that function. I already have that set up. The skeleton is going to look the same, except use these numbers. Drag it over. Check that it does what I want it to do. Add up these numbers. I see, oh, 100. Perfect. Should be 100 because I should be considering 100% of patients. Okay, so far so good. I know it gets a little lengthy. It's the first one. It depends on your background with spreadsheets, and I have to assume you have none. So I don't want to go too fast. Frequency table, done. I guess we make this bold well, right? The heading bold stands out nicely. What's next? Well, I need to make a histogram. That's what the question says, histogram. Histogram, and then I'll just quickly describe what we see if we see anything. All right, well, let's do that then. I can do it by hand. We did that last time. Graph in Excel. I'm just going to move this over a little bit. My graph over here. Graph right there. What is going to happen? I'm going to insert. So go to the Insert tab. And there's a whole bunch of graphs here. They call it charts. I want to pick a bar chart. And there's a little drop down there. And it gives me even more options. I can go 3D. I can do all kinds of stuff. Don't want to do any of that. Keep it basic. The first one called clustered column. Now, this is the way I like to do it. It's not the only way. So again, there are many ways to do all of these things. I like to start with nothing. And then I will go and tell it what numbers here should it take to graph. So I have it knows the graph type, but it doesn't know what numbers to use. I will right click in the white space. I will say select data. And then it tells me here, okay, what do you want? So I need to add the Y values, the vertical values, so to speak. I can give it a name, relative frequency percentage, which is already typed there, so I'll just pick that cell. Then it puts something in there for me. I just have to delete that manually. I want the relative frequencies. And so you see it gives me a preview here that might not look right yet. We'll get there. It's a good start. Did I not type that? Give it a heading later if it messed it up somehow. Then I also want to make sure, no, the horizontal labels aren't 1, 2, 3, 4. It was just guessing for me. The horizontal labels should be these group labels. Okay? Okay? Doesn't look perfect yet, but I'm moving toward, right? It's getting closer. It's my relative frequency percentage. Maybe I want to edit that. Just double click on it. Maybe I don't like that. Maybe I want to call it histogram. There we go. Now, the one thing about a histogram, it's almost perfect, except these should really touch each other. They're not wide enough. So I click on it once on a bar, and you see it selects all the bars. If I click on the bar again, it's going to select just that one. Don't do that. Click on the bar once, it selects all the bars, and I might have to right click and say format. Then there's a little, in the newer versions of Excel, there's a right hand little options menu that comes up. The gap width, I need to slide all the way down. That's all I need to do. You can change the color and all kinds of stuff. I don't care about that. Blue is perfectly. Just wanted to make it like a histogram should, all touching. And that's perfectly fine. There's my histogram. See how easy that was? I didn't have to worry about wobbly bars or anything. I could have used the frequencies itself on the right. The profile would look the same. I can add labels and things if I want to. If I select my graph here, or chart as it's called in Excel, you see there's some extra tabs popping up at the top, a design tab. If I open that, then you can add chart elements. Drop down there, you can add some axis titles. I can add a horizontal title. I can add a vertical title, which is definitely not a bad idea. I just double click in that and then say here, shall we say, X value. Vertical one, I can then say relative. Let's try that. Type it out. Relative, it's sideways, it's weird. Frequency percentage. There you go, why not? I don't need to edit anything else. Perfect histogram. Look how pretty that is. Nothing more is needed. Now, do I see anything in terms of distribution? It's hard to say. You know, the peak is in the center, 3 to the right, 3 to the left. So I don't really want, I can't say with confidence that it is skewed. It might be slightly skewed. I can't say from this, right? Kurtosis, I can't really say either. So those things are hard to visually assess, but in a dedicated statistics software package like SPSS, which we will look at next, we can calculate the skewness index. That even if the skewness is slightly off, it will give me just a very small value that I can then visually I can't assess it. It does calculations that will be a little bit too fancy for us at this stage using these scores because I can't visually just say, oh, it's skewed. And then I can decide, well, that skewness is so slight. It's just confirmation that it isn't really skewed in any significant or practically significant way. Same for the kurtosis. I need to calculate an actual number to represent that because I can't always see how does this compare to a normal curve shape. Is it steeper, more narrow? Is it wider? I don't know at all. Don't worry about that. Maybe you see something obvious like we did last time. There was obvious positive skew. Maybe you don't. That's perfectly fine. So if you don't see anything, you can just say, no, I don't see any obvious skew to this distribution because the peak is centered. I can't read too much into this 35 to 39 column being higher. It's hard to say. So can't say much. Now, I think we've gone long enough. I'll just briefly mention that applications like Excel, it does have built-in uh, data analysis tools a toolbox for statistics specifically, but then we're edging towards dedicated software. The lines get blurry. That's not the purpose for me here. But if you want to go and explore that further, you're welcome to. Under the data tab, you might see a data analysis tool here, or toolbox, giving you a lot of different tools. You see histogram is one of them, and you can explore that further. That's not my goal here, so I'll leave that to you. It does give you an opportunity to cross over into something more dedicated, more of a toolbox, but then everything's done for you more and more, and it's a risky game. If we go to that too fast, having things done for us, we don't necessarily understand what we're doing anymore. My goal with our initial examples in the top B is do it by hand, go slow, inefficient, yes, but I understand what I'm doing. I solidify that understanding that I developed in topic A. Yes. With the second part of B, using a spreadsheet, we're not doing anything new. I just want to demonstrate how Excel, how a spreadsheet can be used as a more efficient calculator. I still know exactly what I'm doing here. Frequencies, relative frequencies, everything. It's just, it's going to look a little nicer, of course. This histogram, I can't draw a histogram this nice. So there's that benefit. And it's just a little bit more efficient with the spreadsheet formulas. Nothing is done for me. And then in the last part of topic B, the next video, we will introduce SPSS, which is the one we'll use here. There are other statistics software options. We'll use that one. Fairly common in medical and social sciences. We'll introduce that, and we'll use that as we progress through the course, where in that case, things are kind of done for me and I just interpret the results. Different needs, different uses to be aware of. They all have their benefits. All right, we'll stop here for this topic. See you in the next video.